All right, so we're diving into A Study in Scarlet, those first few chapters, where we first meet Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of everything, right? Like Conan Doyle just throws us right into this world.
Victorian London.
Exactly. It's a society kind of like teetering on the edges change, right? You've got all this modernization happening, but there's this undercurrent of anxiety, like a fear of what's coming next.
And right smack in the middle of all that is John Watson.
Oh, yeah, Watson. Fresh from the war, injured, kind of just drifting around London.
Totally lost.
Yeah, he's searching for something, some purpose. It's no wonder he's drawn to Holmes.
Because Holmes is anything but lost.
Not at all. And it's interesting how Stanford introduces Holmes to Watson. He doesn't just come out and say, hey, this guy's a genius detective.
He's a bit more subtle in that.
Much more. He's like, well, he's a bit too scientific for some people, and then drops that line about Holmes beating cadavers in the morgue.
Wait, to figure out how bruises form.
Exactly. I mean, who does that?
It's that mix of brilliance and, well, strangeness that makes Holmes so fascinating.
Totally agree. And Watson, he's so observant. He picks up on all of that, right?
Right.
Makes this whole list of Holmes's knowledge, like how he knows nothing about literature or philosophy.
We can tell you everything about, different types of cigar ash.
Yeah, and poisons.
Yeah.
And bloodstains.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
his mind is this finely tuned instrument just focused on what he needs for solving crimes.
And then, bam, we get that scene in Brixton.
The murder scene.
Yeah, the empty house, that word R-E written in blood. It's chilling.
It's meant to be. Conan Doyle doesn't just tell you what's there, he makes you feel it. The silence of the house, the description of the body. It's creepy, but you can't look away.
And that's where we really see the difference between Holmes and, well, everyone else.
Especially those Scotland Yard detectives, Gregson and Lestrade. They're good, don't get me wrong, but they're so stuck in their ways.
The intuition and experience, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Holmes, though, he comes in like a scientist, looking for those tiny little clues that everyone else misses.
Like figuring out the murderer's height from his stride.
Or the type of cigar he smoked just from the ash. It's amazing. And you can see how Gregson and Lestrade are, amused by him.
They don't quite take him seriously at first, do they?
Not really, but it makes you think, right? In Victorian London, how many crimes went unsolved because people weren't looking for those little details?
It's a good point. But even Holmes, he isn't always right. Remember that whole thing with the old woman in the ring?
Oh, yeah, she outsmarted him.
He is kind of amused by it, though.
It shows he's human. Even the greatest minds can make mistakes.
And then we have this whole other layer of the story, the newspapers.
Oh, they're going wild with speculation, aren't they? Secret societies, foreign spies, you name it.
Blaming anyone and everyone.
It's like a commentary on how fear can just take over, especially when people are already anxious. They want answers, simple explanations.
But sometimes the truth is way more complicated.
Exactly. And that's where Holmes shines. He cuts through all the noise, focuses on the facts. And you know what else is interesting? His Baker Street division.
Those kids.
The street urchins, yeah. Holmes uses them to gather information. It's brilliant, actually. He's not limited by the usual rules of investigation.
He's willing to look anywhere for the truth.
And he sees value in people that others overlook. That says a lot about him. But even with all that, even with Holmes's brilliance, Gregson ends up arresting Arthur Charpentier.
Because of the mom's testimony, right?
And some circumstantial evidence. But you can tell it doesn't sit right with Holmes. It makes you wonder what he's already figured out.
Yeah, is Charpentier really the guy?
And then, boom, Stangerson is murdered.
Another locked room, another récit written in blood. It's like the killer is taunting them.
Absolutely. And now Holmes knows he's dealing with someone truly dangerous, someone who's planned everything very carefully.
Which leads us to that crazy pill experiment.
Oh, man, the suspense. One pill is harmless, the other is deadly. And Holmes uses it to
test his theory, right. And then the chapter ends.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Conan Doyle definitely knew how to keep people hooked.
Oh, for sure. He's just getting started. It's wild how Conan Doyle, uses this whole mystery to talk about bigger things.
Yeah, like what?
Like that word augurai, it's not just a clue, it's like this symbol.
Yeah, it's written in blood at both murders. It's definitely more than just a random word.
Exactly. It's almost like a signature or something. And the fact that it's German adds a whole other layer to it.
It makes you think about all those Victorian anxieties, right? Like fear of outsiders, secret plots, that kind of thing.
For sure. It feeds into this idea that maybe something bigger is going on, a conspiracy.
And the newspapers are eating it up, blaming secret societies, foreign spies. It's crazy.
It makes you wonder, Are they really trying to find the truth? Or are they just trying to sell more papers?
Probably a bit of both.
Probably. But it shows how easy it is for people to jump to conclusions when they're scared, you know, and how the truth can get lost in all the noise.
Which brings us back to Holmes, right? He's not swayed by any of that. He just focuses on the facts.
Like with that pill experiment, talk about high stakes. One pill is harmless, the other is deadly, and Holmes just calmly uses it to test his theory.
It's intense. But it also shows how much he cares, you know? He's not just trying to solve a puzzle. He wants to save a life.
Yeah, he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. That's often forgotten about him.
Definitely. And remember how he reacted when that old woman with the ring outsmarted him?
Oh, yeah. He was even mad.
He's kind of impressed, actually.
Yeah, it shows he doesn't take himself too seriously. Even the greatest minds can be wrong sometimes.
It makes him seem more human, you know? But then, whoa, Conan Doyle throws us a curveball.
The American chapters?
Yeah. We go from foggy London to the Wild West. Talk about a change of scenery.
It's a bold move, right? To just pause the main story and take us to this whole other world.
1 minute we're with Holmes. The next we're with John Ferrier and Lucy in this harsh, unforgiving landscape.
It's almost like Conan Doyle is trying to show us two sides of the same coin, you know? The violence in London, the struggle for survival in America.
And then there's that wagon train. Those guys seem kind of intense, you know? Grave, iron-faced men, Conan Doyle calls them.
Led by Brother Stangerson, no less. Talk about a coincidence.
Like Stangerson, like the murdered secretary?
The one and only. It can't be a coincidence, right?
So what's the connection? What was Stangerson doing in America? And how does this whole wagon train, this community, tie into the London murders?
That's the million-dollar question. But think about it. The American West is like a mirror reflecting back on the events in London. All those themes we talked about earlier. Justice, revenge, individual freedom versus society's rules.
They all seem more intense out in the Wild West.
Exactly. It's like the Wild West is this testing ground for those ideas, you know, pushing them to the limit. And remember, pay attention to Lucy. She's caught in the middle of all this, but she's got this strength, this hope about her.
Yeah, she seems like a bright spot in a pretty dark story.
She might be the key to understanding it all.
It's amazing how Conan Doyle weaves all these different elements together, you know, the mystery, the characters, the themes.
He's a master storyteller.
And we're only halfway through. I can't wait to see where he takes us next. So we've got, like, 2 mysteries going on, right?
Yeah, one in London and one in America. But the more we read, the more they seem connected, you know?
Totally. And that word, rateo, keeps popping up. It's more than just a clue at this point.
Definitely. It's tied into the whole idea of revenge. And remember, this story isn't just about who did it. It's about why they did it, what drives people to do such terrible things.
Which makes me think about that title, A Study in Scarlet. We've seen scarlet-like blood in London. But what about the American West? It's a pretty red landscape too, right? All that desert and rock.
Good point. It makes you wonder if Conan Doyle's saying something about violence, like it's part of that land, you know?
Or maybe it's more about, like, passion. The things people believe in so strongly that they'd kill for them.
Could be. Think about those guys in the wagon train, you know, the chosen people. It's like they have this whole other set of rules, a different idea of what's right and wrong.
Yeah, and Stangerson was part of that. What was he doing out there? And how does it connect to the murders in London?
It's like a puzzle, and we're just starting to see how the pieces fit together. But keep this in mind as you read. The two storylines, they're like mirror images of each other.
Yeah, what happens in London, it's like it's reflected in the Wild West.
Right. All those themes we've been talking about, they play out in both places. It's like Conan Doyle is saying that human nature, whether it's good or bad, it's the same wherever you go.
And that's what makes this story so great. It's not just a fun mystery. It's about, like, real life.
And exactly. It makes you think about the choices people make, the consequences of their actions.
So as we wrap things up, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from all this?
Keep your eyes open. Pay attention to the details. Conan Doyle, he's clever. He hides clues everywhere. You got to be like Sherlock Holmes. Use your own powers of deduction.
Don't just read the story, experience it.
Yeah, get inside those characters' heads. And remember, the game is afoot.
All right, everyone, that's our deep dive on the opening chapters of A Study in Scarlet. Don't forget to check out the next episode where we'll be continuing our investigation into this amazing story. And be sure to let us know your own theories. We're dying to hear them. Until then, happy reading.